for our second expert speech. Her topic actually is the latest progress of the IND and NDA review procedure in China. So Jianqing joined the TechMed in 2013, following working with the PDPAC for 5 years as Director Drug Regulatory and Science, where she devoted in the drug regulatory policy advocacy. She had 15 years in the area of drug registration and clinical trial with the local subsidiaries of Shering AG, Semclan, Bcam, and Sakarin Pulov. Please see the following. We will have to. We will also have Jianqing to stay with us for a couple minutes after her talk. So if you have any questions I would like to ask Jianqing, please ask your question in the Q&A box, or raise your hand, or message me the question in the chat group. We will invite Jianqing to answer your question after her talk. So Jianqing, stage is yours, please. Jianqing, you're mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, great.
Thank you for your introduction. First, I want to say those 3 companies were Sharing, which is a German company, was taken by Bayer.
Sorry, my pronunciation there.
Then next is Smith-Kline-Beaton, which is a part of GSK now, and Sharing-Plough, also taken by MSD, so it's a part of MSD now. So all of those companies I used to work with disappeared. So.
Thank you for the clarification, and I should work on my pronunciation here. But no worries. Thank you very much for spending the time with our audience today. And I'm sure like your experience in the big MNCs and also in TechMed will give a lot of insights to our audience today.
Thank you. It's my great pleasure to join you today. So next, for introduction, I prefer to turn off the video so you can focus on my slide, okay? I'm not that beauty.
No worries.
It's good?
Yes, very good.
Great. Good morning, everyone. This is Jianqing Chang. As introduced by the organizer, I am from TechMed. With TechMed, I work in the field of drug regulatory policy. I'm so happy to join you. And it's also my big pleasure to share with you the latest progress of IND and NDA review procedures in China. This is the outline I'm going to share with you today. First, let's have a quick look of the framework, then the progress happened in the last few years, and also the drug registration regulation revisions, and also improvement of CT and NDA review and approval. Then the 4 fast track for review and approval. Then this guideline, which you know is very hot topic for the industry in the last few weeks. Then let's discuss about challenges and opportunities. So from this slide, you could have a whole picture of the structure of the legislation and the regulation. So I put it in 4 levels. So first level is laws. So the two laws are the most relevant to our industry. One is the drug administration law. Another one is vaccine law. For the drug administration law, which was revised in 2019. So that was the second revision, and also became effective from December of 2019. So there are big changes in this revision, because that if you follow the progress of regulation in China, you may notice that back to 6 years ago, that the State Council issued an important opinion about the review and drug and medical device review and approval system. So the revision of the law is also a kind of, let's say it, to show, to fix all of this, great improvement in the law, in the legislation. So it's pretty important for industry. And for vaccine law, it's the first one, maybe also the only one in the world, I guess, because we all know very clear that vaccine is a kind of drug, but due to the special situation in China, government prefer to issue a special law only for vaccine. So next level, you can see the state council regulations. The first one is the drug administration law implementation regulation, which is under revision right now, following the introduction from Tony about IPR. You know that in the last revision, back to 20 years ago, the data protection was included in that revision. But for the current ongoing revision, we don't know yet data protection will be covered or not, because still not published yet. For the Human Genetic Resources Administration, which is not the key content for today's sharing, but it's also, cause a lot of, talks and also complaints from the industry because for the time consuming for Human Genetic Resources Administration. The third level is the regulation for ministry, like the NMPA, National Health Commission. We used to call it MOH at this level. So the one drug registration regulation is the key regulation we are going to talk today. There are also many others, issued by at the ministry level. Then the third one, the fourth one, the working documents and guidelines are the most, documents issued by the NMPA or the Center for Drug Evaluation for us to follow when we prepare our IND or NDA submission and conduct clinical research. There are so many in place indeed. So CD and NMPA still on the way to improve their guideline structure. So this slide, you could see the progress happening in the last few years since the reform opinion issued by the State Council back to 6 years ago. The objective for the reform is to encourage drug research and development and to upgrade the quality standard and to meet the unmet medical needs. After making the great efforts in the last few years, many important achievements are fixed now, as I just mentioned in my last slide, in the legislation, in the drug administration law. For example, to support the innovation of new drugs with clinical value and also improved IND or CT approval. Now we have 60 working days. You can imagine that before, the 60 working days was started from the end of 1980. So before 3 years ago, it took much longer than 3 months, to get the CTA approval. And also the conditional approval and the fast track, and also the introduction of MAH system, and also the improvement of clinical trial administration. So all of this important achievements are now fixed in the drug administration law. And in 2017, the 2 offices, one is the General Office of the Central Committee of the CPC and also General Office of State Council jointly issued a notice about the deepening reforms on drug and medical device review and approval system, which is also another very important official document, the highest official document. An important part for this new notice is about the reform of clinical trial administration. Then till the July of 2018, CD announced that to adjust the review and approval procedures for drug clinical trials, the 60 days approval, or within 60 days approval for clinical trial was started from this time point. Then we can see that end of 2019, the DAL and the vaccine administration law was put into force. Then followed the revision of drug registration regulations. And the one I want to talk today is the last one, which was issued by CDE in July, which is guideline on clinical development of oncology drugs directed by the clinical value. For the DRR revision or drug registration regulations, I don't know how to remove this. First, let's talk about the optimization of the CTE review and approval. First, that the CTE notice-based approval within 16 working days was implemented officially, because the one in the late 1980 just CTE notice. So this is officially included in the drug registration regulations. So if no negative response from CDE is heard, then the applicant could move on for this clinical trial. And our next is about formal pre-IND consultation with CDE, which for applicant is so critical, because that for all of questions you could clarify during the pre-IND consultation with CDE to reach common understanding and consensus on the protocol design and the development strategy. So it's very important. Based on this, pre-IND consultation, that 60 working days approval could be ensured. Indeed, that for the communication with CDE, in the past, there are so many complaints, but now there are very few, because that CDE have several channels for communication. It's very productive, generally speaking. These channels are in phone call, email, and meeting request, and also QA column on the CDE webpage. All of this great improvement are highly appreciated by the industry, but the industry still want or expect further improvement. For example, how to shorten the 3 months waiting time for meeting request, and how to optimize the data requirement for meeting requests, and so on. The city has done great work in this part for consultation, but industry wants more. I should let me put in this word. Another improvement is that all of phase clinical trial, including early development and MRCT, are encouraged, especially for early development. Because in the past, that early development was not allowed by the regulations for MRCT. Only the phase two trial started abroad. Then applicants were allowed to apply early development and MRCT in China. So phase 2 was a kind of big hurdle in the past, but now all of these hurdles are removed. So and early development and MRCT are encouraged by the government, and all of data can be used to support the NDA application. And after phase 1, phase 2 study, we need to move on for the later phase trials, and for protocol submission, we can do it online. So we don't have to make another, city approval, waiting for 60 working days. So it's a big improvement. And for the new indication, extension application, we need to make a supplement application. So the channel is also clear now. And for the validation period for the CT approval notice, in the past, it was also said clearly for 3 years, but when to start to calculate the 3 years, it was not clear. But in this revision, it was said very clear that from the time of the first patient signed the informed consent form, then this is the starting point for the 3 years validation period. So as you review could be conducted in parallel. This is said very clearly, even in the laws of drug administration law, it also said very clearly that ethical review should be independent. Independent means no dependent. But in practice, it is not as ideal as we would like to see. We had a discussion among a group of CRO companies a few days ago that I learned that only for early phase study, independent review can be ensured, but for phase 2 and phase 3, less than 20% of the hospitals can run in parallel review. For more than 80% of the hospitals prefer to wait until the clinical trial approval notice is obtained, then they will start the ethical review. Why it doesn't move? I don't know what's wrong with my computer.
Dr. Chang, maybe I can
It works
share.
now?
Oh, it's moving now, right? Do you want like sharing from my screen instead?
Yes.
Okay. Can you stop the sharing and I can start?
Yes, it works now. It works now.
Okay, great. Thanks.
So now we have 60 working days for approval of CTA. The next question is how to protect the patients, protect the safety and the benefits. So there are a few regulations, for the safety and the benefits protection for patients. Even include the suspension and termination of the clinical trial approval once necessary for the applicant and the investigator to adjust trial protocols and informed consent. And IB means the investigators brochure to strengthen the risk control. So for the NDA review and approval, also plenty of improvement can be found there. That one is about the 4 procedures to accelerate the NDA approval, such as the breakthrough therapy procedures, conditional approval procedures, and priority approval procedures, and also special approval procedures. For orphan drugs, conditional approval might be possible, and also innovative life-threatening treatment drugs, and also early registration of pediatric drugs. And for timeline, also, especially for the orphan drugs, 16 working days is pretty, fast. Nice, 130 days for the priority review drugs. For normal NDA procedures, 200 working days. So you can see that how important to have the priority review procedures. So next, let's talk about the breakthrough drug review procedures. So following the drug registration regulations, SFDA also issued the notice for procedures, and later on, in the excuse me, in the November of 2020, CDA also issued a guideline, for the breakthrough what I want to say for breakthrough is that it's not only the timeline, the most important, because this breakthrough should be submitted during the clinical trial stage, not for NDA stage. Maybe after you finish your phase 1, during the phase 2 or phase 3 trials, you need to consider whether your product is eligible for these criteria. What I want to say that it is very important for applicant to have these procedures, because that you could have, a more frequent consultation, with CDE. So it's very important for you to develop or to adjust your development plan, and also rolling submission of data. So if we look at it in total, that the total timeline might be shortened, but also your strategy and plan will be improved, significantly, because due to the deep involvement of CD. So breakthrough is very important. I checked yesterday that up to now there are 74 innovative drugs or modified new drugs have been granted the BTD. I also wrote an introduction about this new regulation. So if you're interested, you can check the webpage of TechNet. So for conditional approval, indeed, that as you can see from the red column, bottom of red column, that the criteria is very high, right? So it's not so easy to meet it. So this procedure is only valid for the patients which have no time to wait. So following these 3 criteria described in the drug registration regulations, in the CDE guidelines, technical guidelines, there are also 4 criteria are there. You need to meet one of each, then you might be granted the conditional approval procedures. Firstly, the significant improvement in the prognosis of the disease compared with the existing treatment. Second, significant efficacy of the patients who are not tolerant to or have no efficacy on existing treatment. Third, significant efficacy for combined with other key drugs or treatment that cannot be combined with existing treatment. Fourth, significant improvement of patient compliance by avoiding serious adverse reactions of existing therapies, or significant reduction of harmful, reactions, and so on. So for the priority review procedures, you can see here that which is valid only for the NDA stage. If you can meet one of these 6 criteria, then you may be eligible to apply for the priority review procedures. For the special review procedures, this procedure is only valid for drugs targeting, the public health emergency, such as vaccine for COVID-19. So, in 2 words, one is as soon as possible. Second is case by case discussion. So, because this group of products is so small, so I don't think we need to talk further. So this guideline, why I pick up this one is that this used to be, not used to be attracted, a great attention from the stakeholders of the industry. In the last few weeks, this guideline was issued on July 2nd, a Friday, because Friday or the day before the holiday, often to be the day for the CD or NMPA to issue the new regulations. So maybe for us to have more time to study during the weekend or during the holiday. This one again also was issued on a Friday. And maybe you still remember what happened in the following week. So I want to say that the CODA draft guideline have so big impact, or is clinical value oriented, is a new concept. If you still remember what I discussed about the DAL, the revision of drug administration law and the revision of drug registration regulations, clinical value oriented included in the laws and the regulations very clearly. So it's not a new concept indeed. And I forgot this clinical value oriented was first appeared in the reform opinion back to 6 years ago in the State Council opinions for reform for drug and medical device review and approval reform opinion. So it's not a new concept at all. So the focus of the discussion of this draft guideline is about the selection of the reference drug or the control drug, because that industry assumed that it was talked about the latest approved drug should be taken as the control drug. To address these questions and other concerns, so on July 7th, I also shared my understanding via WeChat subscription. To my understanding, the principle is science-based and reasonable. So what is reasonable? As I said here, first is clinical practice and the actual needs of patients and accessibility. So it doesn't mean the latest approval, doesn't mean the newest one. But the newest one commonly used by the doctors or included in the clinical diagnosis and treatment guidance. Like this is an example, you can see it on the right, which is the latest guideline for clinical diagnosis and treatment of lung cancer by the oncology branch of Chinese Medical Society, which was issued in June, so 3 months old for this guideline. So for the applicant, the control drugs shall be considered from such kind of guidelines. So for example, for lung cancer, for example, for the precise medication or treatment, so ERISA as an example, because so famous. So if ERISA is so available, widely available, and also included in the guideline, so the placebo or chemical therapy should be taken or not. So we think it from ethical viewpoint. For sure, it is not right decision, and according to this guideline, they will also not be acceptable to take as the reference drug. If a widely acceptable precise medication is there, then you cannot take, placebo or chemical drugs as the reference drug for the study. Single arm is still an important, design strategy for the oncology drugs. If there's no widely recognized, therapy in place, or for the underlying treatment, there's no other options for treatment than single arm design is an important, strategy. And RCD also issued a few, guidelines about this design. And I also want to say that the clinical value-oriented principle is not only, valid for the oncology drugs, should be valid for all therapeutic areas. So before I finish my introduction, let's have a quick discussion about the challenges and opportunities. So after reform for the 6 years in the past, and also the improvement of the regulation and also the legislation, regulation and the guidelines and so on. So now from the applicants, there are few campaigns for the IND and NDA approval. Of course, there are still space for improvement, but compared with past, the pressure is now moved onto the clinical trial conduction stage because there are so big questions there. First is the expertise and capabilities, because as I mentioned that in the past, the regulation does not or didn't allow the early development in China. So how to run early phase study, the capabilities are not there. So in this part, it's big. We have big urgent to improvement the capability to run the early phase study, and also since the implementation of DL, the GCP certification was also removed. So we have new system, we call it filing system for clinical trial site. So many sites want to be the trial site. Because this system totally different from other countries. In other countries, you sign contract with investigators, then you can start the trials. But here in China, you have to sign a contract with hospital institutes. Then doctors, the investigators do the trials. So for these new institutions, their capabilities also need to be improved, so as we can have more cities, clinical trial sites to run the trials. Because if you see the trend for the clinical trials in China, more and more trials now for the innovative drugs in China. And also the procedures in hospitals, also a lot of questions there. And also ethical review cannot be independent. All of this, time consuming. So I checked with my colleagues for clinical operation, and I learned that from the approval of clinical trial, it might take around 6 months for you to start, the first patient to sign the informed consent, which is the starting point to calculate the 3 years validation period for clinical trial approval notice. And the human genetic resources, the regulations, implementation regulations is under development right now. So we don't know when it's going to be issued. For MAH, which is so important, and helpful for the R&D companies, not for the multinational companies, but also for the local startup biotechs. But on the other hand, also need higher requirement for the capabilities of drug life cycle management. Such as quality insurance, risk management, and liability compensation. So all of these 3 important capabilities need to be had by the MH. In the past, when authority review a drug, they only look at the safety, efficacy, and the quality controllability. But now, if you want to obtain your drug registration certificate of a drug, you also need to pass this review for MH qualification. So for MH qualification review or examination, which is handled by the provincial level drug authorities, they will look at quality insurance, risk control, and also liability compensation. These three important capabilities they will check or exam. If you passed, then you will have be granted the production license for your company. Then, if the product itself can pass the examination for a review by the CDE for the drug efficacy, safety, and drug controllability, then you might be granted the drug registration certificate. So this system is different from practice in the past. So the authorities is higher in the requirement for the MAH now. And the second problem is about contract manufacturing across the board. So if MAH is outside of China, then the contract manufacturing should also be outside of China. It can be different from the country of the MAH, but must be outside of China. So if the MAH is in China, then the contract manufacturing organization or the site must also be in China. So cannot be arranged across the board. So this has been companies so much by the companies, because there's so many companies are licensed in. So we want our local startup biotech, they want to be the MAH in China, but with the contract manufacturing site outside of China, according to the country regulation, it is not allowed now. So it is still on the way for the industry to do the advocacy or to convince the authorities that if it had the ability to ensure the liabilities of MH, why it is not acceptable to have the contract manufacturing outside of China. But right now, it is not possible. So for the opportunities, so first is the pre-IND and also the other communication mechanism during the development with CD. So it's very helpful for the applicants. And also 60 working days notice for clinical approval, which also help us to become a part of simultaneous global development. So it's so important for us, because back to the old time when I worked with drug companies, with industry associations, we focused the top one for the issue is the approved timeline for clinical trial. At that time, it takes much longer time for CTA approval. So we missed so many simultaneous global development opportunities. So with 60 working days, it becomes possible now. And the NDA approved timeline also foreseeable now, which is also very important for the applicant or for MH to make the plan, all the plan, production, marketing, and so on. We also have priority review, conditional approval system. I should also write here the breakthrough. With all of this fast track in place, give the applicant more options. And also MH system, which is really helpful for the startup biotechs. Now, if you contract your manufacturing site here in China, is possible. So in the past, you have to invest, heavy invest for the production facilities before you could obtain the registration certificate. So in this regard, MH is really helpful. So you don't have to make your own investment for production facilities, especially for the large molecules. So we can imagine how heavy is the investment. And the implementation of the SAH is also so helpful to upgrade the quality standard, also to help our local startup biotech to go abroad. So for the summary, I only put simultaneous global development here, because with the improvement of IND and NDA approval, simultaneous global development is realized. It is not a dream any longer. as you see. So next, please allow me to take this opportunity to say a few words about my company, about TechMed. TechMed is a clinical CRO. We put the leading clinical CRO here is that according to the Frost and Sullivan 2020 report, TechMed is the largest clinical CRO in China in terms of revenue and the number of ongoing clinical trials. Now we have more than 150 offices and service locations in China, and 1,260 clinical trial sites in collaboration countrywide. So we provide the full clinical trial services, including central lab and central imaging. So all of the works for clinical trial, TechMed is strong. So not only in China, we also on the way to be a global CRO. So from this map, you could see that we have established 46, or we have established 19 offices and sites outside of China, and also we can cover 46 countries. So they are in Asia Pacific, Europe, North and South America, and Africa. The last one is about our regulatory affairs team. So our registration, our team is with TechMed is so strong. Nearly 70 colleagues working with the registration team, which is the largest one among the local CROs. They're very experienced for pre-IND and IND filing in China and in US, as well as NDA filing in China. So many thanks for your attention and your time. So if I have any questions, I'm so happy to discuss with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jianqing, for your wonderful presentation, giving us a really brief introduction on the new updates on the IND and NDA approval updates in China. We are open for question now, so please send your questions to the Q&A session. So our first question actually is about the simultaneous development in China and globe. So there are many cases that China data can accelerate the global approval process, and many of these cases are done through collaboration between Chinese companies and global biotech through in-licensing, out-licensing partnership, arrangement. The question is, given the differences in China and global approval, what are the key components to consider in designing such global trial and approval? Jianqing, yours.
Excuse me? Can you say the question again?
So given the differences in China and the global approval, what are the key components to consider in designing a global trial for the global approval, including China?
I think it should be, for example, for the submission or simultaneous submission in FDA and also in China, right? You need to consider the technical guidelines from both authorities. But this way, for the whole structure of the submission dossier, we follow the ICH CTD guideline. So it's not a big problem. So if we go to talk about individual, products for therapeutic areas, you also need to follow the guidelines from both authorities. So we don't see a big problems here.
Thank you. Our next question is for the MAH issue you just discussed. Could the MAH holder, presumably to be the licensee, manufacture the finished dosage form and then import API from the organizer abroad?
Yes, for API, you can use the one produced locally or import from outside of China. This is not an issue. They look at what they look at is the finished product, the manufacturing side of a finished product.
All right.
So as I mentioned, that MH, if MH in China, then the manufacturing side of finished product must also be in China. See, if MH is outside of China, then the manufacturing site of finished product should also be outside of China. Is it
Thank you.
clear?
Yes, thank you very much, Jinqing. Another question from our audience is, what's the key regulatory differences between biologicals approval versus chemical drug approval in China?
This is another great improvement for the authorities to have been made. The difference so small, I have to say, so small. Maybe for the lab test, is one. For the rest, can be nothing significant. Harmonized, let me put it this way, harmonized for the small and large molecules.
All right. Thank you very much for the answer, Jinqing. Our next question is about the conditional approval or single arm approval. So there are many cases in the US, at least, when we have like 2 or 3 similar drugs that are, I would say, innovative drugs approved based on similar MOA. The later drugs will be really hard to obtain approval through single arm trial. So is that easier for Chinese NMPA for those single arms? I think maybe up to 5, 6. What's the situation in China?
For the single arm, the guidelines, I think I said clearly, the true for the most cases, either there are no treatment, or for the underlying, also again no treatment for the patient, then you could consider single arm. So I think I will recommend the applicant to refer to the guidelines set, I think, very clearly. So if there are available treatment, commonly recognized therapy are there, there's no reason for you to have single arm trial design. If there's no treatment, it's not ethical to use placebo, right? Underline also not ethical, and no other treatment available than single arm is the options. So for oncology drug, single arm is important options or strategy for clinical trial design.
Yes. So how to define the accessible drugs? Are there any clear answer for that? For example, if it is the second or third same MOA drugs on market, second or third similar MOA in the clinical trial, can they still use the single arm given the first one hasn't been on market for a long time? How to define the accessibility?
Accessible means that commonly used in the clinical practice. So clinical practice is the key word when we talk about accessibility. So clinical practice means that either be included in the clinical diagnosis and treatment guidelines, as I give an example in my introduction, or commonly recognized by the society of the doctors, then it can be taken as the accessible. So it doesn't mean the latest approval or the latest 1 or 2, 3 approval. It doesn't mean this way. It's really depends on the clinical practice. Is it clear?
All right. So thank you very much. To follow up the previous MAH question, audience also want to ask, is it possible for the MAH holder only repackage the drug in China and import the finished dosage in the bulk form from the original originator abroad? Does that count like MAH in China?
I don't think so.
So it will be more the licensee or the MAH holder must do more complicated procedures to package the drug.
I got that point. I also heard this question from other colleagues of the industry. I don't think so. But I will take a note for this, because this is, I think they remind me again for this. I think this is a good question. I take a note here. So I will follow. But to my understanding, it is not be regarded.
All right, thank you. So I welcome more questions from the audience. Before that, we have a last question from existing questions here. So what aspect would be key if the new guideline is in place in the future? I mean, the new guideline is referring to the clinical value orientated oncology drug clinical research and development, that new guideline. Yeah.
Excuse me?
So the question is, what would be the key consideration when a company is developing innovative drug, when the new guideline you just discussed are in place in the near future? So now the guideline is for comments, right? The clinical or value oriented oncology drug clinical research and development, that guideline is only for comments. But what will be the key components or strategy planning for the companies once the guideline is in place in the very near future?
I don't think they should think there are big changes, before and after the issuance of these new guidelines, or of this draft guidelines become the official guidelines. I don't think, because for all of the applicants, they are submitting the oncology drugs at clinical trial. They follow the principle or the spirit of these guidelines already. I don't think nothing, special or new for them, because as I mentioned in my presentation, in the slides, this is the practice, for the CDE in the last few years. So they now, put it in a guideline. It doesn't mean they are going to take a new strategy for the review of oncology drugs. It doesn't mean this way. This is a common practice for CDE for the last few years already. So for the applicant, if you are the applicant for oncology drugs, I think you know their sort, because I guess most of you have consultation meetings or communication with CDE, so you understand what is in their mind. So this is nothing, brand new for this concept.
All right, thank you very much, Jianqing, for your question. We received one last question from the MAH question owner. So his or her question is, what if the product is a biological product, meaning antibody, etc.? Could the MAH holder imported the raw materials like yuanye from the originator and do the finishing dosage form, like only filling the injection in China, and that count manufacturing from the MAH holder? Will that also feasible?
My understanding, bulk and the finished product can be different site. So to this specific question, I'm not so sure. I need to check. Is it acceptable to your audience? So once I got the answer, I will give you, so you can pass to the audience with this question.
That would be great. That will be great. So we will collect answer from you.
In China, it's possible. In China, it's possible. Bulk and the finished product are produced by different site. It's possible. But if across board for bulk and finished product, please allow me to check. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much, Jianqing.
For MH, that I'm very happy to discuss with the audience in the future, because back to 2005, we had, did so much works, about MH to convince the authorities to consider the system, which is very mature in other, reference countries. So since, 2009, we had, a few years study with universities about, MH system. So I do like this topic. So when we see that it is in place now, and we all feel, all of us, involved in or participate in the project, we all feel so excited about this introduction of new system. So I'm so happy to talk anytime with the audience about MH system.
Thank you very much, Jianqing, for your offer on this topic. And I hope everyone enjoyed Jianqing's discussion today. And I hope everyone has a better understanding on how to prepare for IND and NDA in China too. And thank you very much, Jianqing. And we will see you next time when we have other events. Thank you.
Thank you.